You've heard his thunderous roar. You've seen his lightning strikes. But what if I told you the mighty Zeus was not as invincible as we were taught? In the grand tapestry of Greek mythology, Zeus, the supreme leader of the cosmos, was not just revered, he was practically worshipped. He stood as the epitome of strength, wisdom, and divine order. Yet behind that facade lay a complex figure, a flawed ruler whose weaknesses could bring him crashing down. Today, we are taking the red pill. We're diving deep into the realm of the immortals to unveil the hidden weaknesses of the one and only Zeus, the king of gods. Welcome, seeker of wisdom, to our channel, where the veil between mythology and reality is as thin as the whispers on the wind. Now, before we dive into the abyss, let's take a moment to frame the importance of what we're about to discuss. Who was Zeus? Why does it matter to understand his weaknesses? Zeus wasn't just a guy who threw lightning bolts. He was the head honcho of the Greek pantheon, the highest god in a hierarchical system that ran the ancient world. His word was law. His actions dictated the fates of gods and mortals alike. Knowing his weaknesses isn't just about unraveling mysteries, it's about understanding the very fabric of a civilization, their fears, their aspirations, their dreams, and their nightmares. It was them putting their deepest thoughts, their hopes, and their traumas onto the pages. And by extension, understanding Zeus gives us insight into ourselves. Now, without further ado, let's dive into the first major weakness of Zeus, the threat of prophecy. Zeus, the supreme leader of the cosmos, was not just revered, he was practically worshipped. Yet behind that facade lay a complex figure, a flawed ruler whose weaknesses could bring him crashing down. Now, let's talk about the prophecies, specifically the one about his own demise. See, Zeus wasn't just a fun-loving party god, he was also a product of his environment. His dad was Cronus, the titan who ate his children to keep their power for himself. And you know what happened. He got the short end of the stick. His siblings, including Hades, Poseidon, and Hera, all got swallowed whole. But Zeus was saved, raised in secret, and then came for his revenge. He made Cronus regurgitate his siblings, and then, you guessed it, they overthrew the Titans together. So Zeus knows firsthand what it's like to be threatened by prophecy. He sees it coming for him. He eats Metis, the mother of Athena, because she gave birth to a son who would overthrow him. That's right, swallowing his wife, a big no in relationship goals. He did that because he was scared. So you see, prophecy wasn't just a fact for mortals under Zeus's rule. It was a ticking time bomb on his own immortality. But it's time to move on. So let's talk about point number 2, his uncontrollable desires. Now let's delve into a bit of godly gossip, shall we? Zeus, the big cheese of Mount Olympus, was quite the Romeo, wasn't he? The god of the sky couldn't resist a little mortal eye candy. Heroes like Heracles, Perseus, and even mortals like Ganymede were his jam. But you know what happens when you mix godly hormones with the free will of mortals? A recipe for disaster. Just think about it. Zeus was basically playing a never-ending game of hide-and-seek with Hera, his eternally suspicious wife. And let's face it, she was not the most forgiving of goddesses. Remember Semele, the mortal who got a little too curious about Zeus's godly form and, well, let's just say she paid the ultimate price. Or how about Europa, the Phoenician princess who was turned into a cow after catching Zeus's eye? Yep, he had a real thing for that bull form. These dalliances weren't just about fleeting pleasure. They were power plays, tests of wills, and oh, so very messy. I mean, can you imagine the family drama? Gods and goddesses conspiring, rivalries brewing, and mortals caught in the crossfire. It was like a never-ending season of Olympian soap opera. But hey, you can't blame Zeus for living his best life, right? I mean, when you're immortal and all-powerful, the world is your oyster. Just maybe watch out for those jealous wives. Moving on to the next weakness, his dependence on other gods. Zeus, the undisputed king of the gods, wasn't exactly a one-man wolf pack. No, sir, he knew when to call in the cavalry, and not just because he was nice or something. Let me break it down for you. Think about it. Even though Zeus was the big cheese on Mount Olympus, he wasn't immune to needing a helping hand every now and then. Remember that whole Titan war? Yeah, he didn't go solo. He teamed up with his trusty siblings, Poseidon and Hades, to take on the monstrous Typhon. And guess what? They pulled off an epic victory together. But here's the kicker. Sometimes those alliances didn't work out so rosy. Remember the war between the gods and the giants? Yeah, that was a rough one. Zeus got so frustrated he chained up the giant Typhoeus and then unleashed lightning bolts like there was no tomorrow. But even in that godly gang, there were cracks showing. In fact, Hera, Poseidon, and Athena teamed up to kick Zeus's butt because he made a bet with the cuties, the Moirai, about, you guessed it, the best way to punish mortals. Yeah, you can't make this stuff up. So what's the lesson here? Well, Zeus might have been the top dog on Olympus, but he wasn't running a dictatorship. He needed allies, advisors, and sometimes even therapists to help him navigate the treacherous waters of godly drama. Let's move on to the next weakness, his symbolic weaknesses. Now, let's dissect the man behind the myth. Zeus wasn't just a walking, lightning-throwing fortress of godly perfection. He was a study in contrasts. Immortality tinged with fear, immense power undercut by vulnerability. This wasn't just a figment of the ancient writers' imaginations. It was a reflection of the human condition itself. Think about it. The fear of losing power, the struggle against mortality, the constant battle between good and evil. These weren't just plot devices. They were universal themes that resonated with the audience back then and still do today. Now, Zeus, with all his flaws, served as a reminder that even in the highest echelons of power, humanity falters. It was like a mirror held up to the faces of the ancient Greeks, forcing them to confront the darkness lurking beneath the surface. And who knows? Maybe that's why the stories endured. They weren't just myths. They were cautionary tales disguised as adventures, tragedies veiled as sagas. And now we've reached the climax of this revelation, the paradox of power. So remember when we talked about Zeus's weaknesses, things like prophecies, uncontrollable desires, dependence on others, and those symbolic struggles that made him, well, human. Yeah, those weren't isolated issues. They were part of a bigger picture, a tapestry woven with the threads of immortality, temptation, and the relentless struggle to maintain control. Zeus wasn't just a victim of circumstances. He was a prisoner of his own greatness. Every triumph was tainted with the fear of usurpation. Every love affair echoed with the specter of Hera's wrath. Every alliance was a gamble, a roll of the cosmic dice. In that sense, Zeus wasn't just the king of gods, he was the king in exile, ruling over a kingdom that was always on the brink of collapse. And finally, it's time for the grand finale. Perhaps the greatest weakness of Zeus was not his fear of prophecy, his lust, or his enemies, but his humanity hidden beneath divine power. There you have it, seekers of wisdom, the hidden weaknesses of Zeus unveiled. Now I want to hear from you. Which one of Zeus's weaknesses do you think was his ultimate downfall? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you've enjoyed this journey through the realm of the immortals, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more thrilling explorations into the world of mythology. Until next time, keep questioning the legends.